The great hall of the Galactic Assembly fell silent when the warning came through. Every species, every ambassador, every military leader stopped what they were doing and turned to look at the massive display screen that covered the entire northern wall. A single red dot blinked at the edge of space. Ambassador of the Dominion rose from his seat. He was a tall creature with skin and 4 eyes that moved independently of each other. His people had ruled this sector for over 2,000 years. They had conquered 11 species. They had never lost a war. "What is this?" he asked, his voice deep and rough like grinding stones. The censor officer, a small being covered in blue scales, checked the readings 3 times before answering. "It appears to be a human vessel, Ambassador. Just one. It entered the contested zone approximately 4 minutes ago." Laughter erupted from the section of the hall. Himself let out a sound that was half amusement and half disbelief. The humans had sent one ship against the armada of 300 warships currently holding the refugees hostage. "They are either very brave or very stupid," said, "perhaps both." Across the galaxy in the cold darkness of space, the human vessel moved forward at a steady pace. It was called the Eternal Soul, and by galactic standards, it was not impressive. The ship measured only 800 meters long. Its hull was painted dark with a single white stripe running along the side. No special weapons were visible. No advanced shields glowed around it. On the bridge of the Eternal Soul, Captain Park sat in her command chair and watched the enemy fleet appear on her screen. She was 53 years old, with streaks running through her black hair. Her face was calm, almost peaceful, as if she was watching a sunset instead of 300 warships. "Lieutenant Han," she said quietly, "how long until we reach communication range?" Lieutenant Han looked up from his console. He was young, only 28, with nervous energy that he tried hard to hide. "Approximately 7 minutes, Captain." Park nodded slowly. "And our friends in the cargo hold, how are they doing?" From the engineering section, Chief Engineer's voice came through the speaker. "All systems are green, Captain. Protocol Sunrise is ready when you give the word. Everyone is stable and waiting." The captain closed her eyes for a moment. She thought about the 42,000 people currently sleeping in the lower sections of her ship. Volunteers, every single one of them. Teachers, soldiers, doctors, farmers, artists, engineers. They had come from every corner of Earth and its colonies. They had left their families, their homes, their normal lives. And they had done it willingly, knowing exactly what would be asked of them. "Good," Park said, "very good." The fleet commander was named. He was younger than most commanders, eager to prove himself, and absolutely certain that this single human ship posed no threat whatsoever. He stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Crushing Tide, and watched the tiny vessel approach. "Should we destroy it now, Commander?" his second officer asked. Shook his head. "No, let them come closer. Let them see our full strength. Let them understand how foolish they were to come here with only one ship. Then we will destroy them and send the wreckage back to Earth as a message." His second officer hesitated. "Commander, I am detecting something unusual about the human vessel." "What is it?" "They are not raising their shields. They are not charging their weapons. They are not even changing course. They are flying directly toward us as if they do not care that we are here." Frowned. This was strange. Every species in the galaxy knew to fear every species raised their defenses when faced with such overwhelming numbers. But the humans just kept coming, slow and steady, like they had all the time in the universe. Arrogance, decided, nothing more. Humans have always thought too highly of themselves. Back on the Eternal Soul, the bridge crew worked in focused silence. Doctor entered from the medical bay, her white coat still on, her dark eyes bright with concentration. She was the ship's chief cognitive architect, which meant she was responsible for something that no other species in the galaxy had ever attempted. "Neural links are all active," she reported to the captain. 42,317 connections confirmed. Everyone is dreaming peacefully for now. When you give the order, they will wake up. Captain Park turned to look at her old friend. They had known each other for over 20 years since their days at the academy, had been the one to develop this technology. She had also been the first to test it on herself. "Are you ready?" Park asked. Smiled, but there was weight behind it. "I have done this 14 times now. It never gets easier, but yes, I am ready." The communication panel beeped. Lieutenant Han looked up with wide eyes. "Captain, we are being hailed by the flagship." "Put it through." The face of Commander appeared on the main screen. His 4 eyes focused on Captain Park with a mixture of curiosity and contempt. "Human vessel," he said slowly, "you have entered space without permission. You are outnumbered 300 to 1. Your species has no allies here. No one will come to save you. I will give you one chance to turn around and leave. Take it and I will let you live. Refuse and I will personally watch your ship burn." Captain Park stood up from her chair. She straightened her uniform and looked directly at the screen. When she spoke, her voice was calm and clear. "Commander, I am Captain Park of the Earth vessel Eternal Soul. We come to negotiate the release of the refugees that your fleet is currently holding. They are innocent people. They have committed no crime. Release them, and we will leave peacefully." Laughed, the sound was ugly and cold. "You come to negotiate, with one ship. You have no power here, human. You have nothing to bargain with." "You are wrong," Park said simply. "Stand down, Commander. Release the refugees, or face consequences that you cannot imagine." The commander's eyes narrowed. "Is that a threat?" "It is a promise." Ended the communication. On the bridge of the crushing tide, he turned to his officers with anger burning in his 4 eyes. "All ships attack formation. Destroy that human vessel. Leave nothing but dust." 300 warships began to move. On the Eternal Soul, Captain Park sat back down in her chair. Around her, the bridge crew waited in tense silence. Lieutenant Han's hands trembled slightly over his console. Doctor stood perfectly still. Chief Engineer's breathing was audible through the speaker. "They are forming attack positions," Han reported quietly. Captain Park nodded. She took a deep breath and let it out slowly. Then she gave the order that would change everything. "Show them what one human vessel carries. Begin protocol sunrise." The ship began to hum with power, and deep in the cargo hold, 42,000 people started to wake up. The Eternal Soul did not fire its weapons. It did not raise its shields. It did not turn and run. Instead, it did something that no one in the fleet expected. The sides of the ship opened up like a flower blooming in the darkness of space. Thousands of small pods floated out into the void, spreading in every direction like seeds scattered by the wind. They were silver and smooth, each one about the size of a small vehicle. They drifted slowly, catching the light of distant stars. Commander watched from his flagship with confusion growing in his 4 eyes. He had expected missiles. He had expected some kind of desperate attack, but these pods were not weapons. They moved too slowly, too gently. "What is this?" he demanded. "Scan those objects immediately." His sensor officer worked quickly, running every test available. After a long moment, he looked up with a puzzled expression on his face. "Commander, the pods appear to be life support units. Each one contains a single human in cryogenic suspension. They are sleeping, sir, frozen, completely helpless." Stared at the screen. Thousands of humans floating in space, unable to move or fight or even wake up on their own. What kind of strategy was this? Were they surrendering? Were they offering their people as hostages? "Count them," ordered. 42,317, Commander. 42,000 humans, sleeping in the cold darkness between the stars, felt his confusion turning into something else. Something that he did not want to admit was fear. "Are they reinforcements?" his second officer asked. Perhaps they planned to wake them and use them as soldiers. Impossible, replied. The awakening process from cryogenic sleep takes hours. We could destroy them all before they even opened their eyes. This makes no sense. What are the humans trying to do? On the bridge of the Eternal Soul, Captain Park watched the pods spread out around her ship. Each one carried a person she had personally met. She knew their names, their stories, their reasons for volunteering. A retired teacher from Seoul who had lost her grandson to a raid. A young engineer from Vancouver who believed in something bigger than himself. A doctor from Lagos who had spent her whole life helping others and wanted to help one more time. Neural upload beginning, Doctor reported. Her fingers moved quickly across her console. First wave connecting now. The pods began to glow with a soft blue light. It was faint at first, barely visible against the blackness of space, but it grew stronger, brighter, until each pod shone like a tiny star. Inside each pod, something incredible was happening. The sleeping humans were not just sleeping anymore. Their minds were waking up, but not in their bodies. Their consciousness, their memories, their very souls were being and transmitted to the central computer core of the Eternal Soul. Lieutenant Han watched his screen with wide eyes. Connection rate at 40% and climbing, 60%, 80%. All stations report ready, Chief Engineer said through the speaker. The network is stable. We are receiving them. Commander noticed the blue light spreading through space. His sensors detected a massive surge of energy, but not the kind used for weapons or shields. This was something different, something his instruments could not identify. What is happening? He demanded. What is that light? What are they doing? No one could answer him. Then the human ship opened a communication channel, but it was not Captain Park who appeared on the screen. It was a woman in a white coat, with dark eyes that seemed to look right through and into his soul. Hello, Commander, Doctor said calmly. My name is, I am the Chief Cognitive Architect of the Eternal Soul. I thought you might be confused, so I wanted to explain what you are seeing. Leaned forward. Explain then, human, what trick is this? No trick, replied. Just science. Very advanced science that your species has never encountered before. She paused, letting her words hang in the air. You are looking at humanity's answer to your numbers, Commander. Those pods contain our people, yes, but their bodies are just vessels, containers. What matters is what is inside their minds. She touched a button, and a diagram appeared on screen. It showed the Eternal Soul at the center, connected by thousands of glowing lines to the pods around it. Every person in those pods volunteered for this mission, continued. Every one of them agreed to have their consciousness uploaded to our ship's central network. Right now, as we speak, their minds are joining together, connecting, becoming one. Felt cold spreading through his body. What do you mean, becoming one? I mean exactly what I said. His voice was steady, almost kind. The Eternal Soul does not have one crew, Commander. It does not have a few dozen people operating its systems. As of this moment, our ship has 42,317 active minds working together, thinking together, fighting together. The bridge fell completely silent. Every officer stared at the screen with expressions of shock and disbelief. 42,000 minds, connected to one ship, working as a single unit. That is impossible, whispered. I understand why you would think that, said. Your species, like most species in the galaxy, sees the mind as something separate, something that belongs only to one body, but humans have always been different. We have always found ways to connect, to share, to become more than we are alone. She gestured to the pods floating in space, still glowing with their soft blue light. Those people out there are teachers, doctors, soldiers, artists, engineers. They come from different countries, different backgrounds, different lives. But right now, they are all part of something larger. They can see through the ship's sensors. They can control its systems. They can calculate and react and fight at speeds that no single mind could ever match. Captain Park stepped into view beside Doctor. Her face was calm, but her eyes held a fire that made one to look away. "You asked why we sent just one vessel, Commander," Park said. "Now you have your answer. We did not send one ship. We sent 42,000 people, and every single one of them is awake, aware, and ready to protect those refugees." Second officer stepped close to him and whispered urgently, "Commander, if what they say is true, then we are not facing one crew. We are facing an army, a networked intelligence that could outthink and outfight anything we throw at them." "It cannot be true," insisted, but his voice lacked conviction. On the Eternal Soul, the network finished forming. Deep inside the ship's computer core, 42,000 human minds opened their eyes in a shared digital space. They could feel each other, think with each other, move with each other. They were separate but together, individual but united. Lieutenant Han felt the connection wash over him like warm water. Suddenly, he was not alone on the bridge. He could sense the presence of thousands of others, their thoughts brushing against his like gentle waves. A retired teacher from Seoul thought about her grandson and felt the support of 10,000 strangers who shared her grief. A young engineer from Vancouver marveled at the sensation of having 100 other engineers helping him understand the ship's systems. A doctor from Lagos smiled as she realized she could now help not just one patient, but millions if needed. Captain Park stood at the center of it all. She was the anchor, the conductor, the heart of the network. She felt every single person connected to her, and she knew that together they could do anything. "Commander," she said, and her voice seemed to carry the weight of 42,000 souls. "This is your final warning. Release the refugees, stand down your fleet, or face the consequences." Stared at the screen. His 4 eyes blinked rapidly, his hands shook at his sides. Then, with a voice filled with desperate anger, he gave his order. "All ships open fire, destroy them all." The fleet unleashed its weapons, and on the Eternal Soul, 42,000 minds prepared to show the galaxy what humanity could really do. 300 warships opened fire at the same moment. The darkness of space lit up with blinding light as thousands of weapons discharged their deadly cargo. Plasma bolts, missile swarms, energy beams, kinetic rounds. Every type of destruction that had ever invented flew toward the Eternal Soul in a storm of death. It was enough firepower to crack a moon, enough to burn a small planet, enough to destroy a fleet of 100 ships. The Eternal Soul moved. But moved was not the right word. The ship danced. It twisted and turned and slipped through the gaps between incoming fire like water flowing between rocks. It rolled sideways to avoid a plasma bolt, then immediately dropped down to let a missile swarm pass overhead, then spun in a full circle to dodge 3 energy beams at once. Commander watched with his mouth hanging open. His eyes could not keep up with what he was seeing. The human ship was everywhere and nowhere. It was there one moment and gone the next. His weapons could not touch it. "How," he whispered, "how is this possible?" Inside the Eternal Soul, the answer was simple. 42,000 minds were watching every incoming threat. Every plasma bolt, every missile, every beam of energy was being tracked by hundreds of eyes at once. Navigation calculations that would take a normal computer seconds were being completed in milliseconds. Decisions that would take a captain precious moments were being made instantly. Navigation officer was no longer just one person. She was connected to 2,000 other navigators, pilots, and mathematicians. Together, they calculated 17,000 microjumps in the span of a single heartbeat. The ship's engines responded to their combined will, moving the Eternal Soul through space with perfect precision. Lieutenant Han felt their thoughts flowing through him. He saw the battle not as a single scene, but as 1,000 perspectives at once. He could sense the fear in the gunners as their shots missed again and again. He could feel the confusion spreading through the enemy fleet like a disease. "They cannot hit us," he said, and his voice was filled with wonder. They cannot even come close. Captain Park stood at the center of the network, her consciousness stretched across thousands of minds. She was everywhere at once, seeing through every eye, feeling through every heart. It was overwhelming and beautiful and terrifying all at the same time. "Begin return fire," she ordered. "But remember our rules, disable only. No killing unless absolutely necessary." Weapons Specialist heard her command and passed it to the 3,000 soldiers, engineers, and technicians connected to the weapons systems. They did not simply aim and fire. They calculated the exact weak points of each ship. They measured the precise amount of force needed to disable without destroying. They worked together like a single hand with 3,000 fingers. The Eternal Soul's weapon systems came to life. But instead of the wild, desperate fire of a cornered animal, these shots were surgical. Each blast hit exactly where it needed to hit. Engine cores, shield generators, weapons arrays, nothing more. The first ship went dark as its engine exploded in a controlled burst. The second lost its weapons when a precise shot melted its targeting computer. The third drifted helplessly as its shield generator was destroyed by a single, perfect strike. Commander screamed orders at his fleet. "Spread out, change formation, do not let them predict our movements." But it did not matter. The human network saw everything. 30,000 minds analyzed the fleet's patterns, while 10,000 others controlled the ship's movements, and 2,000 more managed the weapons. They worked in perfect harmony, each group supporting the others, each mind contributing its unique skills to the whole. In the shared digital space inside the computer core, the 42,000 volunteers experienced something that no human had ever felt before. They were individuals, yes. They still had their own memories, their own personalities, their own dreams. But they were also part of something larger, something greater than any single person could ever be. The retired teacher from Seoul felt her grief transformed into purpose. Her grandson's memory gave her strength, and that strength flowed into the network, touching everyone connected to her. The young engineer from Vancouver laughed with pure joy as he solved problems faster than he ever thought possible. His ideas bounced off the ideas of others, combining and growing and becoming solutions that none of them could have found alone. The doctor from Lagos felt the heartbeats of 42,000 people and knew that she was helping to protect not just her, but the innocent refugees trapped in the ships. Chief Engineer watched the power levels with growing amazement. The human network was not just thinking together. They were actually making the ship more efficient. Systems that normally ran at 60% capacity were now running at 90%. Weapons that should have overheated long ago were staying cool because 1,000 minds were managing their heat distribution. "Captain," he reported, "we are operating at 140% of normal efficiency. The network is not just controlling the ship, it is improving it." Park smiled inside the shared space. She could feel her crew, her family, her people all around her. They were scared and excited and proud and determined all at once. They were human beings at their best, working together against impossible odds. 11 minutes into the battle, the fleet had lost 47 ships, not destroyed, disabled. Each one was dead in space, unable to move or fight, but with its crew perfectly safe inside. The Eternal Soul had not taken a single hit. Commander stared at the tactical display with growing horror. Nearly a sixth of his fleet, gone in less than 15 minutes, and the human ship was not even damaged. It was still dancing through his weapons fire, still picking off his ships one by one, still showing no signs of slowing down. "Pull back," he finally ordered. "All ships defensive formation, pull back." The fleet retreated, their weapons falling silent, their ships clustering together like frightened animals. They had never retreated before. In 2,000 years of warfare, they had never faced an enemy they could not overwhelm with numbers. Captain Park watched them go. She could have pressed the attack. She could have disabled the entire fleet and taken the refugees by force, but that was not why they were here. "Open a channel," she said. The command frequencies crackled to life. Commander's face appeared on screen, and for the first time, Park saw real fear in his 4 eyes. "We did not come here to kill," she said, and her voice carried the weight of 42,000 souls speaking as one. "We came to demonstrate, to show you what humanity can do when we work together, to prove that your numbers mean nothing against our unity." Said nothing, he could not find words. "Your ships are disabled, not destroyed," Park continued. "Your crews are alive. We could have killed them all, but we chose not to. Remember that, Commander. Remember that we showed mercy when we had every reason to show none." She paused, letting her words sink in. "Now release the refugees. We will not ask again." The battle was over, but the true impact of what had happened was only beginning. Across the galaxy, sensor stations and spy satellites had recorded everything. Other species, other empires, other civilizations were watching the footage with growing shock. One human ship, 42,000 connected minds, 300 enemy vessels defeated without a single kill. The galaxy would never look at humanity the same way again. Inside the network, the 42,000 volunteers allowed themselves a moment of celebration. They had done it. They had proven that humanity's greatest strength was not weapons or technology or numbers. It was their ability to connect, to share, to become more together than they could ever be apart. And somewhere in the heart of the ship, a retired teacher from Seoul smiled and whispered her grandson's name, knowing that his memory would live on in the minds of 42,000 people who would never forget what they had accomplished together. The Galactic Assembly had not seen chaos like this in over 300 years. Ambassadors from dozens of species were shouting at each other, their voices mixing together into a storm of noise. Security officers rushed between delegations, trying to prevent fights from breaking out. The great hall that had once been a symbol of peace and cooperation now felt like it was about to explode. At the center of it all, Ambassador of the Dominion stood with his 4 eyes blazing with anger. He pointed at the human delegation with a shaking finger. "This is a violation of every treaty," he screamed. "The humans have developed weapons of mass destruction. They have hidden this technology from the Assembly. They must be punished." The human section remained calm. There were only 5 of them, sitting quietly while the chaos raged around them. At their head was Secretary No, a small woman with silver hair and eyes that had seen too much in their 60 years of life. She waited patiently for the noise to die down, her hands folded neatly in front of her. Finally, the Assembly Master, an ancient being made of living crystal, raised its shimmering arms for silence. The noise slowly faded as every species turned to look at the human delegation. "Secretary No," the Assembly Master said, its voice like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "They have made serious accusations. Do you wish to respond?" No stood up slowly. She looked around the great hall, meeting the eyes of every ambassador, every delegate, every leader who was watching her. "I do," she said simply. Then she walked to the center of the speaking platform, where a holographic display was waiting. "First," she began, "let me address the question that everyone has been asking. Why did humanity send just one ship? Why did we not bring a fleet? Why did we not request help from our allies?" She paused, letting the questions hang in the air. Ambassador laughed when he saw our vessel enter space. I imagine many of you laughed too. A single ship against 300. It seemed like madness. It seemed like suicide. It seemed like the desperate act of a species too weak to protect its interests. Shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Several other ambassadors looked away. "But you were wrong," No continued. "You were wrong because you made the same mistake that countless others have made throughout human history. You underestimated us. You assumed that because we are small, we are weak. Because we are few, we are powerless. Because we are young, we are foolish. She touched the holographic display, and images began to appear. Human history, stretching back thousands of years. Wars and battles and struggles against impossible odds. Let me tell you something about my species, No said. We have been fighting since the moment we learned to stand upright, not just against each other, but against everything, against disease, against hunger, against the very planet we lived on, and almost always we were outnumbered. The images showed ancient battles, small groups of humans facing much larger enemies, defenders holding walls against armies 10 times their size, rebels fighting empires that should have crushed them easily. We learned something from all that fighting, No continued. Something that became part of our nature, our culture, our very soul. We learned that when you cannot match your enemy's numbers, you must find other ways to win. You must be smarter, you must be faster, you must be more creative, and most importantly, you must work together. She changed the display. Now it showed the eternal soul floating in space, surrounded by its glowing pods. The technology you saw today is not a weapon of mass destruction, No said firmly. It is the opposite. It is a tool of connection, a way for humans to share their minds, their thoughts, their very consciousness with each other. It allows us to become something greater than individuals, something closer to what we have always dreamed of being. Ambassador rose from his seat. You cannot deny the military applications. You disabled 47 of our ships in minutes. And killed no one, No replied calmly. Your crews are alive. Your ships can be repaired. We had the power to destroy your entire fleet, Ambassador. We chose not to use it. The assembly fell silent again. The other species were beginning to understand. This was not about weapons. This was about choice. No turned back to the wider audience. For centuries, humanity has dreamed of true connection. We invented telephones to hear each other's voices across great distances. We created computers to share information around the world. We built networks that linked billions of minds together in ways that previous generations could not imagine. She gestured to the image of the eternal soul. This is simply the next step, the natural evolution of everything humanity has ever strived for, not conquest, not domination, connection, unity, the ability to truly understand each other, to share not just words but thoughts, feelings, experiences. Secretary No walked to the edge of the platform, closer to the watching ambassadors. You want to know the truth? She asked. Here it is. Humanity does not need large fleets. We never did, because every single one of our ships can carry thousands of networked minds. Our small navy of 200 vessels represents nearly 10 million active combat-ready consciousnesses. Gasps echoed through the hall. 10 million minds, ready to fight, ready to work together with perfect coordination. But that is not what we want to use this technology for, No continued quickly. War is expensive. War is painful. War leaves scars that never fully heal. What we want is peace. What we want is safety. What we want is a galaxy where innocent refugees are not held hostage by those with bigger guns. She looked directly at Ambassador. The eternal soul is not a warship, Ambassador. It is a promise that humanity will protect those who cannot protect themselves. A promise that we will come for our allies, our friends, and anyone else who needs our help, one ship at a time if we must. No paused, and when she spoke again, her voice was soft but carried to every corner of the hall. And one ship is enough. The silence stretched on. Ambassadors looked at each other, processing what they had heard. The balance of power in the galaxy had shifted, and everyone knew it. The assembly master spoke again. Secretary No, they are still holding refugees. What is humanity's position on this matter? No smiled. It was not a threatening smile. It was the smile of someone who knew they had already won. Our position is simple. They are innocent people. They fled their home system because of a natural disaster, not because of any crime. They have no legal right to hold them. We request their immediate release." Ambassador tried to object, but the words died in his throat. He looked around the hall and saw that no one would support him. The other species were too afraid, too impressed, or too hopeful to side with the now. "I also want to make something clear," No added. "What the Eternal Soul demonstrated today was a defensive action. We could have destroyed the fleet. We could have taken the refugees by force. We could have made an example that would have echoed through the galaxy for generations. Instead, our people chose mercy. They chose restraint. They chose to disable rather than destroy." She looked around the hall one final time. "That is who humans are. We are capable of incredible violence, yes, but we are also capable of incredible compassion. We connect with each other because we understand that every life has value, every person matters, every soul deserves a chance." She returned to her seat, her point made, her message delivered. The Galactic Assembly would vote within the hour. The refugees would be released, and humanity would take its place among the stars not as conquerors, but as protectors. The truth had finally hit hard. The refugees were released exactly 6 hours after the Galactic Assembly vote. 17,000 men, women, and children walked out of the detention ships, blinking in the light of freedom, many of them crying tears of relief. They had been held for 3 months, unsure if they would ever see the stars again. Now they were going home, or at least to a new home where they would be safe. Captain Park watched the transfer from the bridge of the Eternal Soul. Beside her, Lieutenant Han wiped his eyes quickly, embarrassed by his own emotions. Chief Engineer pretended not to notice. "That is the last shuttle," Han reported, his voice slightly rough. "All refugees accounted for. The convoy is ready to depart." Park nodded slowly. "Good, very good." Behind them, the fleet still floated in space. Repair ships were already arriving, and within a week, all 47 disabled vessels would be functional again. Commander had not said a word since the battle ended. Some said he had locked himself in his quarters. Others said he was already writing his resignation letter. Doctor entered the bridge quietly. She looked tired, more tired than Park had ever seen her. The neural network had been active for almost 18 hours, and managing 42,000 connected minds took a toll that few people could understand. "Disconnection is complete," said. "Everyone is back in their own bodies. Medical teams are checking each pod now. So far, no serious complications." "How are they?" Park asked. Hesitated before answering. "Disoriented, overwhelmed. Some of them are having trouble remembering where they end and the network begins. It will take a few days for everyone to feel normal again." She paused. If normal even exists after something like this. Park understood. She had felt it herself when the connection ended. For 18 hours she had been part of something vast and beautiful. She had felt the minds of 42,000 people pressed against her own, sharing their thoughts, their memories, their dreams. And then, suddenly, she was alone again. Just one person in one body with one small mind. It was like losing a family she had never known she had. The pods were being brought back into the ship one by one. Inside each one, a volunteer was waking up in their physical body for the first time since the mission began. Some of them cried. Some of them laughed. Some of them simply sat in silence, trying to process what they had experienced. In Medical Bay 7, the retired teacher from Seoul opened her eyes. Nurse was beside her, checking vital signs and offering water. "How do you feel?" asked gently. The teacher thought about it for a long moment. She thought about her grandson, whose death had driven her to volunteer for this mission. She thought about the thousands of minds she had touched during the connection, all of them sharing her grief, all of them helping her carry the weight of her loss. "I feel grateful," she said finally. "I feel like I am not alone anymore." In Engineering Section 2, the young engineer from Vancouver was already back at work. His hands moved across his console with practiced ease, but his eyes kept drifting to the window, staring at the stars. Chief Engineer found him there an hour later. "You should be resting," said. The young man shook his head. "I cannot sleep. Every time I close my eyes I feel them, all of them. It is like echoes in my head, thousands of voices still speaking even though the connection is gone." Nodded. He had heard similar reports from other volunteers. The network left traces in the mind, memories of being part of something larger. "It will fade," said, "but it will never disappear completely. You will carry those people with you for the rest of your life." The engineer smiled. "Is that supposed to make me feel better?" "Yes," replied simply, "it is." In the diplomatic quarters, Secretary No was receiving a message from Earth. The president herself had called to offer congratulations and thanks. The mission had been a complete success. The refugees were free. They had signed a non-aggression treaty, and humanity had shown the galaxy that it was not to be underestimated. But No was not celebrating. She sat alone in her room, looking at a photograph of her younger brother. He had died 15 years ago in a border conflict with another species, a conflict that might have been avoided if humanity had shown its true strength sooner. "We did it," she whispered to the photograph. "We finally did it." On the bridge, Captain Park made one final announcement to her crew. "Attention all hands," she said, her voice carrying through every corridor and room of the Eternal Soul. "This is your captain speaking. I want to thank each and every one of you for what you did today. What we accomplished was not just a military victory. It was proof of something that I have believed my entire life." She paused, gathering her thoughts. "Humanity's greatest strength has never been our weapons or our technology. It has been our ability to connect with each other, to share our burdens, to carry each other through the darkness. When we joined together in the network, we proved that 42,000 individual humans can become something greater than the sum of their parts. We proved that unity is not just a dream. It is a reality that we can create whenever we choose." Throughout the ship, volunteers listened. Some were still in their pods, some were in medical bays, some were standing at their posts, tears streaming down their faces. "I know the disconnection is hard," Park continued. "I know you feel alone right now, but remember this, the people you connected with are still here. They are walking these same corridors. They are breathing this same air. They are your family now, even if you never speak to them again. That connection does not disappear just because the network is offline." She took a deep breath. "We are heading home. The journey will take 3 weeks. Use that time to rest, to recover, to remember. And when we arrive at Earth, walk off this ship with your heads held high. You have done something incredible, something that will change the galaxy forever. And I am proud, so proud to have served with you." The Eternal Soul turned away from space. Its engines hummed with power as it began the long journey home. Behind it, the galaxy watched with new understanding. One ship, 42,000 souls, and a message that would echo through the stars for generations. In the observation lounge, Lieutenant Han sat by the window, watching the stars drift past. Doctor found him there, 2 cups of tea in her hands. "Mind if I join you?" she asked. He shook his head, and she sat down beside him. "Do you miss it?" Han asked after a long silence. "The network, I mean." Considered the question carefully. "Every time," she admitted. "Being connected to that many minds is like nothing else. It is beautiful and terrifying and overwhelming all at once." "Then why do we come back?" Han asked. "Why do we disconnect at all? Why not stay in the network forever?" Smiled and handed him one of the cups. "Because being human means choosing connection, not being trapped in it. The network is powerful, but it is not life. Life is messy and painful and lonely sometimes, but it is also real. It is ours, and that matters." Han thought about that for a long time. Then he nodded slowly. "I think I understand," he said. They sat together in comfortable silence, watching the stars pass by, 2 individuals who had briefly been part of something much larger. They were separate now, but they would never truly be alone again. The eternal soul carried them home through the darkness of space, and somewhere in the galaxy, other species were already wondering what humanity would do next. They would never underestimate humans again. The end.